Chapter 7 of Devil Worship, the Sacred Books and Traditions of the Yezidis, closes with a chapter on persecution. And whether it's the 7th of 7 or one over the 7, being the sons of the Phoenix, as it could be called, and each having a triple aspect, you could say. These are supposed to be 21. It's apparently not, but there's a traditional solar symbol as such. The peacock is where you get the year, and you'll see that in the base right there. But the history of the Yezidis, like that of the Jews, has been one of persecution. The causes of their misfortune have been one, the fact that they are not regarded as people of the book, and as such, the Muslims have no treaty, which is a lie. They're allowed to make treaties with anybody, according to the Quran. No binding oath. Again, not true, as they do with other non-Muslim bodies. They are permitted people. They've been regarded as people of the book, and there's actual reason to think that for thousands of years before this particular blend of Yazidi, that there's been persecutions of various types. Dareyavaush, the Great, for example. For this reason, they have to make the choice between conversion and the sword. It is unlawful to take taxes from them. Islam does not allow wars of conversion. If you're at peace with the people, you're at peace with the people. Consequently, they must accept the faith or be killed. Islam does not allow people to be harmed for mere disbelief, apostasy, or blasphemy. Their ceremonies have given rise among their neighbors to fables concerning their practices with those of the Nutheri of Syria, ascribing them certain midnight orgies. Well, there's a variety of beliefs and practices among Satanists, but it's not all like the movies. It's usually not like the movies, which obtained for them the name of Chirag Sen Diran, the extinguishers of light. Their determined refusal to enter the military service, as if you don't believe in the war, forcing people into war, that was the main reason why the Sufis were hated, because a lot of the Sufis did not take part in these wars of conquest. Particularly from their Islamic influence, they did not accept that there should be any wars of mere conquest. The Yezidis, with the Christians, have been exempted from military service on the general law sanctioned by the Quran, namely, that none but true believers can serve in the armies of the state. Of course, they are allowed to work with allies, but from time to time, the Turkish government, which hadn't been Islamic by, since at least the early 1600s, 1616 or something, they officially made it clear that they weren't, but they didn't start claiming it till after this book was written, which is an interesting thing. Has endeavored to raise recruits for regular troops among the Yezidis on the ground that, being of no recognized infidel sect, Islam, the Quran doesn't use the terms that would really translate as infidel, they must be included, like the Druzes of Mount Lebanon, among the Mohammedans. See, the Druzes aren't a Muslim group either, but they have same with the Alawiyah. The Alawiyah are closer, though. But they have resisted orders, alleging that the religious law absolutely forbids them to take the oath, which the Turkish soldiers are weekly subjected to wear the blue color and certain portions of the uniform, and to eat several articles of food that are offered to the troops. Hence, they have suffered severely at the hands of the local authorities. I remember, because of the peacock form, the humans are thought to be banned from wearing these colors of this more recent incarnation of Shaitan Malik Tauz. One of the most cruel persecutions which the Yezidis suffered was that brought upon them in the Shikhan district by the famous Beg Raumanduz in 1832, who had united most of the Kurdish tribes of the surrounding mountains under his command. His cry was to crush the hateful sect of the devil worshippers. Well, most of the hate was against them at that point. These people saying, "Oh, love and love and peace and all that sort of stuff can be in parts of Satanism. It's not something." And the Christians, it's out of all the religions that people typically hear of, you think they would be the most listed as the hateful and intolerant of them all, based on reading the Bible and the history. But they put forth like there's this great love thing. The forces of Ali Beg and then the Emir of the Yezidis were much inferior in number to those of the Kurdish Beg. The latter, Ali Beg, was defeated, therefore, and fell into the hands of his enemy, who put him to death. The people of Sheikh Khan fled to Mosul. It was in the spring, and the river had overflowed and carried the bridge away. A few succeeded in crossing, but the greater multitude of men, women, and children were left on the opposite side and crowded on Tal Armus. The hostile Beg followed and butchered them indiscriminately, showing no mercy, while the people of Mosul were witnessing the horrible massacre from the other side of the stream and hearing the cry of the unfortunate for help. Unwilling to render any assistance, for the Christians were helpless, and al-Muslimin rejoiced to see the devil worshippers extinguished. There were people like that, but actually, the hope is more about guiding these entities that worship. One of the incarnations, for example, said to be. Now, there's differing things about these things. It's been put in a lot of language that. But see, the black snake with the white spot, the lion, more regular serpents, the dog with the black spot. There's various things that you would recognize from elsewhere, but from this cruel action of the Beg of Raumanduz, the mounds of Nineveh gained the name Kuyunjik, the slaughter of the sheep. There's also goat and sheep forms. Soon after this, Suleiman Pasha of Baghdad sent a large army to Sinjar under the command of Lutfi Effendi, who set fire to Jebel Sinjar and caused all the inhabitants to flee. Then Hafiz Pasha of Diyarbakir attempted the subjugation of the Yezidis of Sinjar on the grounds that they were plunderers. After meeting some resistance, he accomplished his purpose in 1837 and appointed a Muslim to watch over them. At another time, Muhammad Rashid Pasha of Mosul attacked Sinjar. On both occasions, there was a massacre. The Yezidis took refuge in caves, where they were either suffocated by smoke or killed by the discharge of cannon, and thus the population was reduced by 3/4. These and other similar injustices at the hands of Pashas of Baghdad and Mosul, and the Kurdish chiefs led the Yezidis from time to time to send a deputation to lay their grievances before the agents of the European powers, and they have even sent commissioners of the Sultan. They finally succeeded in enlisting the interest of Lord Stratford in 1847 to obtain at Constantinople a proper recognition of their religion and exemption from military service. And you'll see also that most of what Muslim majority countries took part in regarding persecuting this group. Not only did they not find their support, if they look at a whole issue in terms of Quran and Sunnah, but it's very specifically when these states were a lot more secularized. But the severest of all the persecutions, while the Davas Yasnas by Dareyavalsh, they destroyed temples and all sorts of stuff. There's some remnants of what the Darius is. Was it Darius the second? Darius the second and third, I think, took part in some of that stuff. So, which I was an eyewitness, was perhaps one which the Yezidis of both Shikhan and Sinjar suffered in 1892 at the hands of Faruk Omar Pasha, Lieutenant General of the Turkish Army. This Faruk was sent in the summer of 1892 as a special commissioner by the Sultan to accomplish certain definite things in the states of Mosul and Baghdad, to collect 20 years unpaid taxes, to induce the Bedouins to exchange their nomadic life for village life, to convert the Yezidis of Sheikh Khan and Jabal Sinjar from their idolatry to the true faith. He was a harsh man in his methods and manners. He first invited some of their chiefs to Mosul. They came and listened to what the new Pasha had said. They met him when Majlis el-Adara, council of the state, composed of Olama and a few Christians, was in session. In this presence of noblemen, he began to tell them that if they would give up their devil worship, they would be rewarded with high place and rank. Well, the fire beings may allow this dissimulation and lying to maintain the faith, but the union of the clay and the fire beings, they're already considered of high rank among that. The Church of Al-Herman talks about being accepted into the company. Now, you can't be, once you're accepted into a company like that, why would they, unless they were actually converted rather than forced? They would be rewarded with high place and rank, and to please the great Allah. But they answered not. When the Faruk saw that his words failed to persuade them, he began to apply the weapon of cruelty. He cast them into prison. Some died, others fled, and a few, through the fear of torture and painful death, pronounced, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, with their lips, but not from their hearts. And the Quran, Surah 63, warns against that sort of thing. It's like people testifying, but they're really deniers. So that's why religion's not forced. Then he sent an army to their villages and commanded them to choose between Islam and the sword. Omar Beg, his son, was commanding the soldiers, directing them to slaughter the men and take captives the pretty women and girls and marry them. Well, forced marriage is sexual abuse, not valid in Islam, for example. He slew about 500 men. Many became al-Muslimin from fear. Among these, Mirza Beg, their civil chief. Now, see, that and the action of the Christians and the Zoroastrian priesthoods and groups even before that in ancient Assyria, that's why they take on the guise of the dominating groups in the area and even become influenced by them. But the forcing of religion, like we see with the Bon in Tibet, you don't know what was Bon, you don't know what was the type of Buddhism that made its way in, but it formed a new type. And then he placed mullahs among them to teach the children the Muslim faith. He ordered the newly converted Yezidis to pray 5 times every day and to perform all the religious rites. To make them continue to be Muslimin, he tore down their shrines, especially those at Bahzani and Ba'ashikha. Such events encouraged the Kurds to come down and add greater cruelty to what was already done. But Amir Ali Beg, their chief in civil and religious affairs, long after imprisonment and torture, did not change his religious belief, even openly, that he might not be an example of firmness. Oh, to the Yezidis. The Farq banished him with soldiers to Katamuni, a place near Constantinople. The consequence of all these persecutions, the number of the Yezidis has been constantly decreased. In the 15th century, there were 250,000. In the beginning of the 19th century, there were 1/5 They are still declining and remaining under the clouds of misconception and are consequently the objects of aversion and hatred. But they console themselves with the idea that they suffer in the cause of their religious convictions. Now, if a person is to label a group as ignorant or evil or a particular action, when it comes to mythology, the thing that hopefully people would have grasped from my channel is this bit of that these things represent good and truth. And so a Turkish, chirag means lamp. It's the object of sondaran. Okay. And the testimony is, I testify that there is no deity except God, and that Muhammad is the apostle of God. Now, if we're going to use the Arabic word, people who are monotheistic, well, maybe only those who are monotheists. There are monotheist Satanists who say, well, we can interact with the other fire beings, particularly the chiefs, but we only call upon Shaitan, or they would avoid using that word, some groups of them. I've encountered from other, I've heard from Satanists that aren't of any formal Yazidi path, although the term, they're talking about some sort of Satanism that's of a theistic sort. But let me go through here again. And perhaps upon finishing this, I should return to my Damaniakas Vama, Luzu Vama. It's according to your intentions. When you study or go over mythology, witness the rites. Perhaps be tolerant. There's maybe certain crimes that you don't want to take part in, or you may want to put a stop to. But if it's just theological difference, let the sun rise in you. That does not repel the change. Are you ready for your becoming?